Every single winter, beekeepers all over the world face this just grim reality. A huge number of their honeybee colonies simply won't make it to spring. And it's a massive problem. But the real cause isn't just the cold weather. It's actually a hidden mystery that gets started long before the first frost ever hits. So let's dive in and solve it.
So what is really going on inside that hive? I mean, we see the devastating results come springtime, but the dominoes that lead to a colony's collapse? Well, they start falling months and months earlier.
The scale of this problem it's just staggering. In some places, beekeepers are losing up to 40% of their colonies every single year. Can you imagine any other kind of farmer just accepting losses on that scale? It's totally unsustainable, and it tells us we're missing something critical about what these colonies really need to survive.
Now, it's really easy to point the finger at the cold or at pests like the varroa mite. And look, those are absolutely serious threats, don't get me wrong, but they're often just the final blow, not the root cause. The real culprit is a hidden nutritional crisis, a hunger gap that shows up at the absolute worst possible time of year.
To find this hidden hunger, our first clue comes from a simple comparison, looking at the bees we manage versus their wild cousins. Because it turns out that how a bee lives completely changes what it needs to survive.
And this chart just lays it all out. Wild bees, they live in these super well-insulated hollow trees spread way far apart. What do? We keep them in thin wooden boxes, often dozens of them packed into one single bee yard. We also push them to grow into these huge populations to get more honey. Every single one of these differences adds stress and jacks up the colony's total energy bill.
And that brings us to this really crucial concept, metabolic load. Just think of it like the total energy bill for the entire colony. Everything they do, staying warm, fighting off a virus, going out to find food, it all costs energy. And modern beekeeping practices have sent that energy bill straight through the roof.
This quote just illustrates the idea perfectly. Every single one of those stressors acts like a drain on the bee's internal battery. If their house is poorly insulated, they have to burn more fuel just to stay warm. If there's a sick colony nearby, their immune systems have to work overtime. The more drains you have on that battery, the faster the whole colony just runs out of power.
All right, our second clue is all about timing. It lies in the colony's annual clock. You see, a honeybee colony runs on a super strict, predictable schedule. And as we're about to find out, getting the timing right is everything. A colony's population isn't some static number. It ebbs and it flows with the seasons. And inside that yearly cycle, there are two critical make-or-break moments where one generation has to successfully pass the baton to the next. And getting these handoffs right is quite literally the difference between life and death.
So the first handoff is the spring turnover. That's when the old, long-lived winter bees have to raise the first generation of spring foragers. But the second period, that late summer transition, that's where our mystery is hiding. This is the moment when the summer bees have to raise a very special generation of winter bees, bees that are physiologically built to live for months, not just a few weeks.
And what's so interesting is that most beekeepers totally get the spring turnover. They often feed their bees to help them through it. But for a long time, very few recognize just how critical that late summer transition is. This is the moment that truly decides if a colony will succeed or fail over the winter.
Okay, so we know that our managed bees are under a high metabolic stress, and we've pinpointed a critical moment in their annual calendar. So now it's time for the reveal. Let's put these clues together and uncover this hidden hunger gap.
This question really gets right to the heart of the mystery. What could possibly connect the amount of rain we get in July to whether or not a bee colony survives the winter? The answer exposes the whole problem perfectly.
Just look at this data from New Brunswick in Canada. It tracks the number of rainy days in July and compares it to bee colony losses the very next winter. The pattern is crystal clear. A dry July with not much rain leads to a sky-high winter loss rate. A wet July, the losses plummet.
This chart makes the connection just impossible to ignore. A dry July back in 2017 was followed by a devastating 41.5% winter loss. But a nice wet July just 1 year before that, the loss rate was only 18.7%. That's less than half. This is not a coincidence, folks. This is cause and effect.
So, here's the crucial link. A dry July means the fall flowers, things like goldenrod, they just don't produce enough nectar. This lack of natural food creates a hunger gap right in August and September. And this is happening at the exact moment the colony needs a ton of nutrition to raise a big, healthy population of fat winter bees. Without that food, the queen just stops laying, and the colony goes into winter with a small, aging, and weak population.
Now, the good news is that once you understand the problem, the solution becomes pretty clear. Beekeepers don't have to be at the mercy of the weather. They can step in and bridge this hunger gap with a proactive feeding plan.
The strategy is simple, but you have to be proactive. Instead of just hoping for a fall nectar flow that might not even happen, you end your honey harvest in late July. Then, right away, you start giving them supplemental food. This makes sure the queen never stops laying, the colony keeps its brood-rearing momentum going, and they build up a strong, young population that's ready for winter.
And this right here is the key takeaway. Once a colony shuts down brood rearing in the fall, it is almost impossible to get it started again. The colony's biological clock is screaming at it to shrink down for winter. The whole goal of this strategy is to never let the engine stall in the first place, to just maintain that momentum right through the critical hunger gap.
This quote from researcher Randy Oliver just says it all, doesn't it? The mystery of all these winter bee losses, it isn't really a mystery. It's the predictable result of a nutritional crisis in late summer that we can actually prevent. Which leaves us with one last thought. Are we asking too much of our bees, or have we simply not been listening to what their annual clock has been telling us all along?